Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is the afternoon lecture for Tuesday, day 2, week 1 of Web Fundamentals. We're going to be going over more CSS properties, mainly the box model and inline block. What do those mean? Why is that important? So we're going to be going over those topics. And then after this lecture, we're going to be grouping up and doing a lab project where we'll be, well, I won't explain it till we get there, okay? And then we're going to present at 4. Okay, so let's get into today's lecture. Before we go into the box model, I wanted to just highlight a couple of CSS rules. We talked about CSS having colored text and sizes. So let's just look at a little bit of each of these in a bit more depth. Okay. I want to just thoroughly cover everything here. We can name colors by their name spelled in plain English, right? Red, green, blue, magenta. We can find the red, green, blue combination, and that's its own system. RGB and then parentheses the color combination of red, green, and blue, or you can have the hexadecimal number. And Vincent, I believe, linked in Discord chat a color picker. It's a tool that can be used so you, let's say, for example, you're mocking this page and you want to know exactly what color blue this is. You can target the blue, and then you have the color of the hexadecimal code copied to your clipboard. Then you can paste that code in. Okay. Background color. Color affects the font color. Background color affects the color of the area where H1 is occupying. Okay, but not including the text. All right, so there's a difference between color and background color. We're going to be using background color throughout this lesson a little bit more often than we had before. Okay, for text, we can align text to the center or to the right, like we presented for that H2 that we had for the lecture. All right, we can make it align to the left, center, or right. That's how text align works. There's also ways to eliminate text decoration or add text decoration. Here, text decoration underline would underline something as you would see here. Or text decoration line through. There's a dash there that you don't see because the line is covering it. But the line through would make a line appear through some text. Imagine you're making some text for an e-commerce website and you want to make something that says sold out or sold to cross out a price of a listing or something. There's different ways you can use it, but text decoration none, we're going to be using that. And the reason is, let me show you here. I have this template I've created for us. It's an HTML with CSS connected. It just says hello world. I just want to open it to test that it's working. Okay, there it is. So we have our hello world. Let me shorten this. Okay. And I want to add an A tag or an ahref, an anchor tag, yeah. I don't have a destination I want to send it to. I'll just put the hash there for a placeholder. And I'll say click me. And if we take a look at this A tag, do you see how, let me zoom in. See how it's a different color and it's has an underline here. This has a text decoration already to it. So if I use the inspect tool and I click the hover tool there, I hover over to the A tag and I click it, you can see here text decoration underline. So by default, A tags have the text decoration underline. So in order to change that, I have to target this A tag. Let's target all the A tags on our page. And I will say all the A tags, text, decoration, none. And if I refresh this, you see the underline is gone. If I want to change the font to black, well, we know how to do that. That's just the last step to making this link look like a regular black text. All right, so now this A tag looks just like the text next to it. The difference is now it doesn't have underline and the purple color. That's because we said text decoration none to the A tags on our page. I could have also targeted it by a class or an ID selector, but we apply it to our A tags to make the underline go away. Font style, we can make it italic, or to make an italic font style normal, we say font style normal. You can say bold, light, normal to increase the boldness of the font or decrease it. And there's font weights that you can also add between 100 to 900. Creators of CSS decided that the value should be measured in hundreds, so font weight could be in 100. Or I'm not sure if it was them, but that's how it's measured. And so if we click this font family link, what we see here are different font families, Times New Roman, Times Serif. Fonts are a whole study in themselves, and I won't go too deep into them, but here's the definition here. The font family property specifies the font for an element. Font family property can hold several font names as a fallback system. If the browser does not support the first font, it tries the next font. That's why there's multiple fonts listed here. Your font may apply on one browser, but it may look different interpreted by a different browser, depending on who's viewing your site. So you want to have multiple of the same family in case the browser doesn't read one, it'll have the next in line. Okay. We'll go over one more slide. Width and height. Width and height are going to be really important for this lesson. Okay, so we're going to define boxes on our page, and we're going to need width and height in order to do that. And there's different ways that we can measure width and height. We can use either percentage or px for pixels. I'm going to have us start off with just using pixels. Percentage has its use, and it's definitely super helpful to measure things by percentage. But for now, I think let's just get the basics of working with pixels before we start making things look a bit more dynamic using percentage. Okay, and this may change from time to time. I may use percentage when I don't know the exact pixel amount, but it doesn't matter. And you'll see how I will use them interchangeably. So I hope that you would, you can use the habits you see me do in the lecture, of course, but I recommend using pixels as a default measurement for how you would measure height or width for now. Okay, so font sizes are measured in pixels as well. You can change it by pixels, or you can use point or EM or %. There are different ways to measure the same thing. And here it shows the different ratios for each. So you can search if you need here to find that ratio you need for the different measurements. But again, just get good at one at a time. Use pixels to start with. Figure out how many pixels on your screen is 100 pixels. Your eyes get to memorize the distance. Overflow scroll. Let's see what this does. Okay, so I'm going to, before I continue, let's take a poll. How well do we understand, or do we feel about color, text, and sizes so far? Using different color, text, and sizes properties. Okay. Now let's look at this overflow scroll, see what it does. I'm going to create a div here, and it's going to have a lot of filler text in it. I'm going to say over lorem times 9. Okay, here's a lot of filler text. And I'm going to target all the divs on my page. I'm going to say all the divs. There's only one, so I'm going to target all of them. And I only need to just target one. So here's the target for that div. I'm going to say I want the height of this div to be 200 pixels. And the width of this div to be 200 pixels. Okay. But before I execute this, let's just comment this rule out and see what this looks like before and after. Okay. So let's look at our page. I need to zoom out. Here's our page at normal size. And here's how much room that text would take up. Now, if I define the height and width to be a certain amount, what would happen? Can that text fit in a pixel, in a block that is that height and width? Let's see. So it makes itself into a column in order to fit. This rule here, overflow scroll, can be a solution to that. So now it is the definite height of 200 by 200. And to read all the text, now we can scroll our mouses to see what lies in this block of code or block of information on our page. Okay, so that's how overflow scroll works. We can also change the background of something. So in this case, you can see here URL to an image, and the image says no repeat fixed center. So that's the pattern defined for how the image should be the background for this p tag. let's affect the background of our, let's take this rule and add it to our div instead of the p tag. Okay, let's see what this does exactly. I need to have some image that resembles cherries. So let me see here. This is what I need. Cherry. And I'm gonna have to create a new folder for the images and save it there. And change it to JPEG. So now let's see our page. Oh, I didn't target it correctly. Okay, I'm gonna do / in here, then click images folder, then click my image. So this is the file path location I need. So / is key. Let's do that again. / is going to give me the current file location that CSS is in and its neighbors that it can access. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to choose the images folder, go into there, and then choose this option, the only option that we see in there, this image I've just saved, cherries.jpg. Now let's see our page. Oh, did I still not do it right? Let's see here. Oh, and maybe change the color. Okay, so that's changed. Maybe I didn't spell it correctly. Okay. I think it has to do either with our image. Now our image is displaying there, so that's what we should be seeing on our screen. Let's try it again. Maybe if I remove the dot, that might be the trick to it. Okay. Well,
If you try, what happens if you get rid of the overflow?
these rules here. Oh, the overflow. I see.
Maybe. No.
Let me take away these height and width rules and comment out this text. Okay, let me inspect.
Hey, real quick, what's the shortcut to comment text out like that?
You highlight the block that you want to comment, and you hold down Command and then /.
Command / okay.
Yeah, actually I need to add it back again, and I want to see why my image, oh, there it is. What did I do now? Okay, sometimes that's how it is. It's like I'm trying to show how to fix it, and then it just fixes itself right before it allows me to do that. I think it has to do with the size of our image. Is there a way to, okay, if we change no repeat or a center, let's see what it looks like. Okay, and if we delete no repeat, okay, so it'll fully expand and the image size is too big for this view of the window. If we add back those rules, no repeat, you would see the image repeating, but it's so big that you won't see that repeat now. So there it is. stops there. Fixed and center. So if we remove center, it'll fix itself to that area that you just saw it go to. So if I remove this, okay, so that's just no repeat.
Could you
Just
make
fix.
the image 100% of whatever size of your kind of where you're writing? Is there any way to do that? Like just say, hey, match the size of this, the image match the size of my basically block where my words are.
Yeah, there's definitely a way to do that.
Okay.
And right now, oh, here's the rules that we need. Okay, so let's try this. Background position center, background size auto. Let's try these instead. Okay. No, these are the same exact rules. It makes no difference. No, there is a way, and it's a special. You would need a bit of tinkering with it because it depends on the size of the image itself. And if it's like a rectangle, square image, to fit it exactly to your div, you have to think, how is your div size? Is it a rectangle? Is it a square? And how that image is going to stretch in that view. So there's multiple factors that go into that. Okay, let's move along. I think we've gone over enough of the sizing rules. Let's move on to the box model. Okay, we can make an image a background of something. There is a special way to go about making it the same size as the div that you're working in, the block you're working in. And we can learn how to do that. That's a special, we won't need that for anything that we're working on in this course. You can learn how to do that for your personal project, and that's a good time to research that. Okay, so let's go over the box model now. So with the box model, I want to demonstrate something first. Every div that you create on your page is going to be initially a horizontal line straight across the page. And let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to eliminate everything in here. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to create just one div. There's just one div in the body now. I'm going to target everything on the page. So this is going to target that div. And I'm going to say outline 1 pixel or 2 pixels solid red. So this is going to outline everything that's on the page with a 2 pixel solid red outline. So if we look at our page now, this is our div. This is how our div looks when we create it by itself in an HTML body. It's a line straight across the page, and that's because it's within the body, which is the width of the window that you're working with. Body is always going to be the width of the window, so it's going to stretch with the body. Okay, so a div is just going to be a line by itself. Let's add some style to it to make it a block. So I'm going to target all the divs now, and I'm going to say height 200 pixels, width 200 pixels. So now this is our body. The body ends at this bottom line. And this is our div, that block right there. This is the rest of the body, this area over here. So this is our div. In fact, I want to give the div a different outline. I'm going to say div is going to have an outline of blue. Okay, so this is our div, our blue div. If we add another div, we just start stacking divs. We're going to have boxes stacked on top of one another. These blocks here are behaving by their default property. If I inspect these blocks, you'll see here div has display block as its default. Display block as its default. Do you remember when in our previous lesson we talked about the difference between some elements being block and others being inline? Block would always go on the line below, it would indent to the line below, and inline would stay in the same line as its neighbor when it was created. So when we're dealing with divs, we're dealing with block elements. They will always indent to the next line. So how do we make blocks then go side by side next to each other? How do we make things go side by side next to each other? How do we make blocks behave as inline elements?
Block.
Right, we're going to need something called inline block. And so if I apply inline block to these by saying display inline block, now if I allow the window space, if I squeeze it in, they will be inline as much as possible. If I allow the full width of the window, now you see they're all in line because I told them to be inline blocks based on their size, which is 200 by 200. They're allowed to be here in this window in line.
So would it be best to wrap, like, let's say you're building a website, you got the header, the body, and the footer. Like, would it be better to wrap every section in its own div?
Usually, yes. Yes, that's a good idea. If for areas like the nav bar, for the main body, and for columns, we're going to make them their own divs. Yes, definitely. We're going to section out and dissect pages now according to how we think they may have divided the divs. So good question.
And would you give those divs, each div their own, like the class name or ID name, like what each section represent, or do you like create
Yes.
a whole, okay.
Yes. Yep, you're asking the right questions. That's the direction we're going in. We'll be giving divs class names and arranging them on the page as we need to see them. Okay, and we'll be strategizing how to arrange these div blocks that behave like columns until we tell them to be in rows, how their size should be, where they should be in relation to one another. So we need to go over some of these inherent properties of these divs in order to understand how to manipulate them. Okay, so this is the overall concept of what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to be arranging div blocks on a page. Okay. Yes.
Just a random question. Would the body tag also be a block element, or?
It's a good question. How would we find out? You can inspect, and if you
my assignment, so yeah,
click the body, you'll see here display block, and it has a margin of 8 pixels.
Yeah, that explains. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's continue. So before we go over inline block in depth, let's learn about the box model. Let's learn about the box model. What is the box model? This is the box model right here. There's layers to each element on the page. So each tag that you create has some default values. Like we saw here that when we hovered over this block, it has some default values of display block. Now that I've added display inline block, this rule is nullified. It's canceled out. You see how that line is crossed through. Now it's telling me its default rule, display block, is being ignored because we said display inline block. Okay, and it also has this box model, as you can see here. It has margin, border, padding, and the rule that we said 200 by 200 pixels. So we're going to learn about what these layers in this box model represent. What do these layers represent and what do they mean to us? How can we use these layers to our advantage? Okay, so let's go over the layers. Margin is going to be the space around. Space around a block. Okay, so let's target this block number 3. Let's give this block number 3 a specific class so that we can target this one. We'll say class equals block 3. Let's target this class. And I'm going to say, I want this one to have a margin property of 40 pixels. Okay. And now you can see in the background it's changed already. What margin is the space around. It's the most outer layer. Think of it as like a force field. This aura that lives around it, and people cannot enter this zone. It's not the area that the content is occupying, but its margin. Okay. This is like its front lawn. Still its property, so you can't go and wander in there. So as you can see, when I say 40 pixels, it will add 40 to the top, to the left, to the right, and to the bottom. And so now everything is arranged around it, respecting its rules. So if I use this click hover tool, when I hover over block 3 and click it, you can see 40 pixels is applied to the margin on the top, left, right, and bottom. Okay, and so that's why it's pushing down and pushing itself away from its neighbors. It's pushing the body down as well because it's so big. Its margin is so big, it's pushing the whole space that the body needs to occupy on the page. So the margin is the space around. What is the border? The border is, so if margin would be like the front lawn, the area around the house, the green grass, the border would be the fence, right? The border is the fence. So let's affect the border by changing the color of the border. We'll say border 2 pixels, solid red. And so now you see the outline and the border are different, but now the border has a red property here. It's like a frame. Then you have padding. Padding is the space inside the block. Padding is the space inside the block. So if I say padding to increase, what's going to happen to the block? Any predictions?
The space for the content is going to be inside that padding, so it's going to bring like your edge from the border inward. And then anything that's content will be inside that padding.
It gets thicker?
It gets bigger. It blows up like a balloon. So if I say padding 40 pixels, it will let's see, I'll make them side by side. Goes this. Okay, without padding, it's small, like this size. With padding, it blows up 40 pixels from within on all sides. You see that green area that we just added? Now the area inside has increased. We've made the house area blow up. It's expanding. It's pushed out the fence as well. Okay, padding we can increase on all sides by saying 40 pixels, and then we have the area that we originally defined, 200 by 200 pixels for all of our divs. So using these rules, now we can distance divs from each other on our page. We can create them as blocks and distance them on the page. We can add specific margin rules. We can say, let's say I want a margin to be 40 pixels, except on the margin on the left, I want the margin on the left to be 100 pixels. So we'll say margin dash left, 100 pixels. And did it refresh? Okay. Without it? Yes, so it definitely moved. Let's make it 200 so it's a bit more visual. So 200 pixels from the left instead of just 40 on all sides. And you can imagine what you can do now. You can say margin right, you can say margin bottom, margin top. You can affect padding on just the bottom, on the left, right, or top. So padding can be specified. And there's another way you can specify it. You can say padding top like this, like you see on the platform, to a certain pixel. There's also this way. These 4 measurements are for the top, right, bottom, and left. Think of a clock, right? Starting at the very top, right, bottom, left. So let's take this rule and add it to our block 3. Top right, bottom left. Top has 25, the right has 50, the bottom has 75, and the left has 100 pixels. As you can see here, when I click it, I can see the box model representation when I scroll down on styles. Okay, let's do a pulse check. How well do we think we're understanding the box model? How well are we understanding the box model? It does need a bit of tinkering with to get familiar with, and that's what we're going to do right after this lecture. We're going to get us in groups to be working with this box model, to be working with divs, and to help us understand how inline block works a bit better. Before we go on to inline block, I want to show you guys this as well. When you have 3 divs stacked on top of one another, and you define a certain margin, that force field around that we said the lawn area to our house, the area around it still belongs to us, but it's not visibly attached to us. So this margin area, if you add it to blocks stacked on top of another, you would expect it to look like this, right? But it actually is going to do this. Why? Because the rule is only the margin of the element with the largest margin value will be honored. Only the margin of the element with the largest margin value will be honored. So this one on the bottom has a larger margin element. And so when these are touching each other, this force field is going to take over, and this one gets eliminated on the bottom. The larger one takes priority. So it will look stacked like this instead of like this. So keep that in mind. And you'll have to get used to how that works, and that just comes with practice. So
If they're all the same size, would they stack like the first example?
If they're all the same size, they would be let's show a visual for this as well. That's good. That's a good segue to the next topic, inline block. So let's take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to remove this inline block. I don't need this rule as well. Oops. Put the indent here. Let's see our page. Okay. And we wanted to see our margin, right? Margin. They're all going to be the same size of 40 pixels. And so they stack on top of each other like this. See how they share that same margin space there? This one, when I highlight over it, it says, this area above me is my margin space. And this one above says, no, well, that's actually my margin space. That's how they stack on top of each other. So they're not really honoring each other's space at all, even if they're the same size. You see that?
Yeah.
And it's a design inherent in the language, so we have to figure out ways to go around this, and that's why we'll introduce this way of doing styling using inline block for today. Then we're going to pivot to another direction of doing the same thing with using a much more complex rule. Complex, not a bad thing, being it has so many more options to it than inline block. Okay, so now that we've covered this, the margin and how the margins take priority, let's look at this here. Inline and block. So we know what a block is and what an inline block is. A block will stack one on top of another in a vertical direction like a column. Inline blocks will behave together if they are all defined as inline blocks. So because we're defining all the divs as inline blocks in this case, they would all be horizontal next to each other. What if I gave special class names to each here? If I said the first div is going to be a class of block 1. The second one is going to have a class of block 2. In block 3, we already have that defined. Okay, so I'm going to take away this display inline block from all of our blocks. Okay, so now they're back to being vertical. And I'm going to apply display inline block to each class individually. Let's see the results of this, and I'll show you why I'm doing this. Display inline block. For block 2, display inline block. And here's already what I wanted to show you. Since we didn't display inline block to line 3, it's not going to be in line with its brothers, its sisters, its siblings, whatever you want to call. All right. This inline block doesn't have inline block applied to it, so it's not going to behave in going horizontal to its neighbors. So it will only go in line if it has itself inline block. I was applying it to all 3 at once by targeting all the divs, but I wanted to show you if you target individually, you have to apply to all 3 for all 3 to be inline. Okay. So, last thing here before we break out into our groups, take a look at this area. You know what? I just realized before we move on to this, let's do a poll check. How well do we think we understand applying inline block and why we need to apply it to all the elements that we want to be in line, either by targeting them as a group or individually? Okay, good. All right, moving along. This area here, I'm going to copy the code to get a view of this content here. So let's take this code and paste it below block 3, 3 p tags, and the styling that comes with it. We have display inline block, a certain defined width of 200, box sizing we called border box. I'll explain what that means in a minute. We have padding to be 20 pixels, so that's that area within. So there's 20 pixels of space within the block. That's why there's a little bit of space between the words and the edge of the block. So that's the padding of 20 pixels, a background color of light green, and a margin of 10. So that's the space around it. That's the space that's the space you see between the blocks. Okay. The only difference between these blocks is that one lorem ipsum text of p tags is larger than the other. So let's. Did I paste it all within the 3rd block? No, I hope I didn't do that. Yes, I did paste it in the 3rd div. I don't want to paste it there. Okay, here's our p tags. Let's take the CSS, paste it. Okay, as you can see, the 3rd one has more text. And since they're inline block, they're all within this area that they're allowed to live in. How do we make the smaller ones go to the top? There is a rule that we can apply called vertical align. Vertical align top will make these green ones go to the top of the area they're allowed to go in. So if we say that here in this p tag rule, vertical align top, now you see they jump to the top of the space they're allowed to go in. Okay, you can apply vertical align top to inline blocks. Let's take a poll of how well we think we understand how to apply vertical align top. Okay, so vertical align top allows inline blocks to go to the top of the space they're allotted to go. Okay, so what we need now is a bit of hands-on practice with all these rules. We want to make blocks. We want to move them around the page according to what we need them to view like. So we're going to transition now into our afternoon lecture section, or not lecture, but lab section. Before I do that, I just want to highlight here one of our assignments that we're working on, plotting our blocks. Everything that we've talked about in today's lecture should help you complete this assignment, how to complete this assignment and to get our code to make our blocks look like this. We're given a HTML and CSS template. We copy that. We edit some of the rules in here to make the code that we're given to look like this. Okay, so now, do we have any questions about inline block or the rules related to inline block, like vertical line top? Making blocks different colors. Here, oh, one thing I forgot to mention. How do I affect the color, the background color of each block? I want to affect the color of the block by touching the background color. And we did a little bit of that with the P tag. You see here it says background color light green. Let's affect the background color of block 2. So background color dark red. And there we have it. We can now affect certain sections of the page to be certain colors. All right, so let's take a look at our calendar. We have lab time now that starts in a few minutes. And the lab time is called vexillology. So who can tell me, if you know, what vexillology means? Vexillology. That's better. Vexillology.
I'm assuming it's a study of flags.
There you go. You've got it. The study of flags. Okay, so let's study some flags. Let's look at the Japan flag. Japan flag is a white rectangle with a red circle right in the middle. So imagine if you were creating this flag using HTML and CSS. How would you do it? How would you center this circle? How would you make it a circle? You'd have to find out how to make divs rounded. And how would you color it red? Right, this one seems kind of simple. Let's move on to a harder flag. What about the French flag? Maybe this is not that much harder, right? How would you create the French flag? You have maybe a border radius area that you're using, okay? And then you have 3 divs. You have this div area, this one, and then this one as well. You'd have to adjust their height, make them rectangles, and make them side by side next to each other. We know how to do that, right? But what did we just learn to do to make blocks side by side next to each other?
Inlay block.
Yep, so that's what we'd need to apply. Change the background colors. So this is another easy level flag. Okay, if we want to see higher difficulty level flags, let me take control of my mouse here. It wants to edit. Okay, here we go. All right, so the French flag and the American flag. I have yet to see a group complete this one to its fullest, getting all the stars and stripes to look perfect like this. Okay, so I'll challenge you guys to try to make the American flag. It's a rectangle. How would you make certain
The
bars?
assignment.
What's that?
That's the assignment.
Well, no, what we're going to do is break out into groups, okay? Like we did this morning for algos. And whoever you're grouped with, pick amongst yourselves a flag that you want to challenge yourself to make. Okay, we're going to challenge ourselves to make certain flags. Okay, if you want to start with something easy and use the leftover time to create something more difficult, do that. If you want to start with something hard and use all the time you have allotted, the whole 45 minutes, because we're going to present at the end, to make something challenging, then go for it. I encourage you to do it. Here's a challenge. And you can select any flag you'd like. It doesn't have to be of a country. It doesn't have to be a, you know, anything. It can be any type of flag as long as you're doing, as long as you're challenging yourself to make something worth the time.
Can we use images as well?
Use what?
Images, like for certain designs.
Yeah, yeah. You can use images for certain designs. Maybe, you know, you can't make a div a star, but you can pull up a star image and make it behave in a certain way, a certain pattern. So think of a different flag. Who has another flag from another country that they'd like to see?
Belgium.
Belgian flag. Okay, that's like the French flag, just different colors.
Like 90% of flags.
Who's got another flag?
Brazil.
Okay, this one's challenging. Because how would you get those little stars to be aligned in the center that way? That has to be an image. If you do this with CSS and HTML, then you should be teaching this class. But no, it's possible to get these stars in a way with just HTML and CSS. Anything is possible. I would imagine, though, with the time we have to make an image to do that. There's also a way to make the edges green and the yellow, this rhombus shape. What is it called? I think a diamond. Okay, so definitely Brazil. I've seen that done, or at least really close to it. So challenge yourself with Brazil as well. I think the Mexican flag would be pretty hard, right? How would you get that eagle in the middle without using an image? Okay, that's a little bit too hard.
What about South Korea?
That one would be hard too, because it has on its edges those rectangles that are sideways, and plus this yin yang symbol. Yeah, making it curved like that, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but it's doable. It's possible.
The Greece flag.
Japan's flag is gonna be easy.
This one is definitely a pretty flag. I like this flag, and I think it's a good challenge for you guys. This is a good intermediate challenge. So not too easy, not too hard. Greece flag is definitely worth doing. Good choice, Vincent. Okay. All right. So let's break out into groups. We don't need to go over this anymore. Does anyone have any questions about what we're doing? Okay, so we'll go ahead and present our flags at 4. So we have the whole next hour in our groups to go ahead and pick a flag. And remember, the way that we want to do this is by having the person most confident directing how the code should be written. You shouldn't be the one writing the code. You should be directing someone else. That person should be the driver writing the code. the person directing should be the navigator, okay, and the third person should be the presenter, okay. So everyone should be participating. Don't just be a fly on the wall. We don't like to see people not included. You guys all deserve to be here. So include each other in participating in our groups to try to figure out how to make our flags. Okay, so let's go ahead and break out into groups now. Okay, and there we go. Enjoy.